about today?
What do you want to talk about today, Megan? What do you guys want to talk about today?
Wow, indecisiveness. Let's go with that. So, getting all in on,
Where does your indecisiveness come from, Mark?
I'm never indecisive. I choose one way. Hey, can you turn mine down?
Right.
Yeah.
You just want two things at the same time. Is
That's
that
right.
indecisive?
No, it's multitasking.
No?
And multitasking is a lie.
Yeah.
Because you don't actually multitask. You just move really quickly from one thing to the other. That's fucked up. So,
You need to get shit done.
why? Because I want to feel productive. If I feel productive, then you guys will tell me that I'm worthwhile, and then my self-worth will be better. How about that?
Ooh, that was deep.
It's funny, we were talking about this a little bit earlier. It's like, I think there's a lot of things we do unconsciously that satisfy deep-seated needs that we have, or aka core needs that they have, or we have. So basically, actually, it's actually a good idea, is when things happen early in life, we end up developing ways to deal with them that suit the time that we're in. That makes sense? When I'm a kid and shit happened, I developed the ways to deal with the world based upon the skills that I had at that time in my life. Okay? Or coping mechanisms, or whatever you want to say. But then the reality is that what I needed them for stopped. A situation stopped. But they still became part of who I am. My means of dealing with the world when I was young, shutting down, using anger, blowing up, all of the shit that I learned worked really well for me then. But I got to figure out how well do they serve me now. Does that make sense so far?
Yes.
So, how do we make the unconscious parts of who we are conscious? What would be the value in it? Is there value in it?
Yeah, I think it helps. I think most people have to have some outside person, maybe, tell them, hey,
Speak up. Nobody can hear you.
Realize you're doing this. I feel like that's how most people get clean, is like someone's like, why are you in the bathroom 10 times every 2 hours? Or the court is like, hey, you're doing a lot of fucked up shit in your community. Or someone's job is like, you have poor performance, what's going on? Like I feel like most people, for addiction, most people have to have it pointed out to them by somebody else. Even like they might have a little bit of awareness, but not like the full picture maybe, or the depth of it.
Yeah, there's a ton of, I didn't. It took me 5 months of sitting in jail before I finally dawned on me, hey, maybe you got a problem. That it wasn't just the situation or the place I was. I know every addict I've ever known has come up to them, and their family or somebody close to them comes up to you, you're a fucking mess, you need to change your life. And most of them are like, yeah, thanks, I already knew that. How the fuck do you do that? How do I make a meaningful, different change when everything I've ever known tells me to run the opposite direction? And when that's, using is, it's the symptom. It's not the problem. And when coming through and looking at what's actually driving my decisions and my actions is I think we all have really deep desires for acceptance or approval or connection or love or, any version of something that's a deep-seated need. And if we don't make what's driving our actions conscious, then we're going to end up fulfilling those needs in a bunch of really unconscious ways.
Yeah.
What do you think of all this, Megan?
Mm,
Say it.
I don't know. I think someone has to point out the pattern in order for the pattern to like be aware of it.
What do you mean? Give me an
Just
example.
what Elise said. Someone has to point out the pattern of what is occurring to you. It's not like we come into this world with self-awareness, like something that's developed.
How do you develop self-awareness? It's a good question.
It's a good
Or good
question.
good thought. How do we actually or mindfulness, a little more mindfulness if you would please. What the hell does that actually mean? Or a little more presence.
To me, I mean, like, even practicing self-identification, like, as I learn to do that on my own, I'm receiving feedback from other people. Like, even when I do mindfulness, right, like, to me, that's like a guided meditation. And it's someone's voice in the meditation telling me, now focus on your hands. And then my brain is like, oh, do I need to go grocery shopping? Do I have time to do that? Should I? And then they're like, focus on your hands. And I'm like, oh yeah. And then it's like, oh, I'm anxious about this thing. That person hasn't texted me back. And then the person's like, focus on your hands, right? So I have to have something outside of me continually putting me back where I need to go. And the more that I practice that, the more natural it becomes for me to do.
So finding some levels of, presence,
Yeah, like I think, like I have to have other people be helping me do that in order to learn how to do it for myself.
What do you do if you don't have those other people?
You gotta find them.
Where?
Well,
Where do you
I guess
find
it
other people to
depends.
help you be more present?
Are we like I guess it depends on who calls you out on your bullshit first, right? Like if it's substance use, somebody calls you out on it, and like,
Or even if you're willing to hear it.
yeah,
If you're not
By
willing
someone
to
who's
hear it,
around
yeah,
you.
if they're not willing to hear it, then
mhm,
Yeah, the willing to hear it part is where I struggled. I wasn't, honestly, I remember sitting in jail and my mom, she was the only person who would still occasionally take my calls, not even all the time. And when I would call, I'd be like, hey, what's going on? What are you doing? She's like, I will talk to you if you want to talk about one thing. And I'd be like, all right, what's that? She's like, your addiction and what you want to do to get into recovery. Fuck you, I don't have a problem, click.
why that?
2 hours later, oh shit, I got no one else to call. Hey, what are you doing? You want to have that conversation yet? What conversation? No, click. And just the constantly getting put into a position where I just don't have any other options. Like, honestly, what motivated you guys to actually do this differently? And actually, so you guys have multiple years in recovery. What was the transition point that actually made, like, can you identify a spot where this actually changed for you? Like something that was just a shift of, I don't want to say perspective, but a shift in something that actually made it tangible for you.
Yeah. To me, it was, like you're saying, run out of options. Like, I had to be backed up in a corner. Where, like you're saying, coping mechanisms, right? Like, my coping mechanisms weren't working anymore. Like, I had run out of options.
What do you mean? I know you, but not a lot of other people do. What does that mean you ran out of options?
Like, I'd absconded too many times, and then I was facing, like, serious jail time. And whether I used or not, I could barely get out of bed. And I was so sick that I couldn't even hustle without getting caught. Like, all the shit that I was doing, it was running me into a dead end.
Okay. What was it for you, Meg? What created a shift in your life where you really kept doing this?
I don't know, because there were like 2 points. There's the point that I was like backed up in a corner, but that's not really where like I started to do the work. The work came like 9 months later.
What do you mean? Nobody that was with you would understand. So help us understand where that is.
Which part? The
Both.
backed up in a corner? Or
Yeah. What do you mean you were backed up in a corner? What does that mean?
I mean, facing, like for me, it was, I had like a month left of probation, and I was like, what comes after this? Because for me, it was either prison comes after that, or overdosing comes after that, or going to treatment comes after that.
Well, the first two sounded kind of shitty.
One of those options that it's like you better fucking pick what you're doing.
So, can I assume since you're still here, the one you picked? You're not in prison and you didn't die, so recovery was the option. Okay, so fast forward. You said something happened 9 months after that. What was that? And what do you mean?
Yeah, I mean it was not like it's not the most. I don't even know. It was, I mean, I went to treatment at like a therapeutic community, which is like our therapeutic community in Colorado is based off of like the prison system, built off of like, in part, confrontation. And if you transfer that to like 12-step language, the concept of like being each other's eyes and ears, meaning that if I see you doing a behavior, I'm going to call you out on that behavior. And I remember being in, they called them games. It's like reality therapy games. It's like a treatment modality. But I remember being called a homewrecker and being like, wow, this is my pattern of using is relationships and then destroying those relationships. And like, I remember the way that she called me a homewrecker was just so like matter of fact. She was like, so you're a homewrecker? And I was like, fuck, I guess I am. and then came like this moment of like, is that what I want to be known for? Is that who I want to be?
In the matter of fact, because is that based on the idea you'd been telling yourself another story for a very long time that did not collaborate with that?
I mean, I think in my mind, I was like, I mean, I liked the idea of like being a victim, right? Like people in my life had kind of like always kept me in this victim mentality, and so being called a homewrecker was like, that's not making me the victim, that's making me the victimizer. And so it was like, what do I do with that? Is that who I want to be?
What's the difference between a victim and victimizer? Being a victim or being victimized? I
mean, I think for me, like being a victim, right? In my head, I don't even like saying being a victim because that's not what it is to me. It's playing the victim. It's allowing myself to stay in this state of mind where I'm powerless over things and circumstances, and like there's nothing I can do on my part to change it when there is.
Yeah, there's a lot you can do.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's where like the self-awareness comes in.
Totally. Yeah, I mean,
like recognizing like, no, I can't change the world, but I can change who I am and change how I respond to it.
Yeah, and I can change my perspective and I can change how I approach things. I mean, yeah, we have it's funny you worded it that way. We have a tool in the book which is called Victim or Victimized. You know, and I didn't really see, I know this is language and this may not sit well with some people. I mean, there's the terms of being a survivor of certain things. There's certain things that are catastrophic. I mean, the way I was trying to think when we wrote this was trying to think about this is victimized is something that happens to you that's beyond your control. For example, when I was, sexually assaulted when I was a kid, I didn't even saying that shit. That just happened. I didn't even say it. But I spent a long time in my life using, as a result of that, basically saying, I deserve to get high because that happened to me. And then it dawned on me one day, yeah, that happened to me 35 years ago. So how long do I want to let this past situation be in control of who I am today?
And it sounds like, I feel like, we have this internal story, right? Of I am the victim. And then it takes 10 people that you feel like might have a reasonable mindset to tell you hey, you're fucking up. You're doing this thing or you're thinking this thing that isn't reality. Yeah. And I feel like it's the more you hear that from the people around you, the more you're reality is not aligning with my story. And then that's this identity crisis comes out of it, where it's there's too much reality to keep ignoring.
There's a saying that says, or at least in treatment we used to say it all the time, is that other people's perception of you is your reality. Because you're so blind to the way that you act and the way that you behave. The only people who can actually see your reality are the people who you interact with.
Yeah.
And so that's why they're the ones that call you out.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm you're not in the present moment. You're too busy with everything else.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to see that because you're too caught up in everything else.
Yeah.
The only person that's going to be able to see that are the people that interact with you.
Yeah. Yeah, and then it's that willingness has to grow too, right, to receive it, like you're saying.
Right, yeah. If you're not going to hear it, then you're not going to hear it.
Yeah. Which I think that's the pain point, right? How much pain am I in to
hear it?
Be willing a little bit.
Well, I can hear it, but there's a lot of things that stain that having those nasty experiences happen to us at a very young age, or whatever age it was. Now, I want to be clear. There's a lot of things that were truly out of our control that we had zero say in. And that is, I'm not trying to say that you're a victim because you had something catastrophic and very nasty happen to you. But a lot of times when I see people, I'll speak for myself. When I was victimized, I develop ways to deal with that situation at the time with the skills that I had. When that first started happening, I was fucking 9 years old. I had zero control over say, and I didn't know what to do. And there's all of the immediates that set in, my shame, the guilt, don't tell anybody, hide, lie, cheat, this is bad, this is my fault. And so we developed coping mechanisms, ways to deal with the situation that happened, and though that situation stopped, all of the ways that I learned to deal with it stuck with me. And they became part of who I am. That's why if I'm not super conscious to this day, that situation that happened when I was a kid made me really good at one thing. I can check the fuck out like nobody's business. If something's happened and you don't want to be there, I'm like, bye, I'm not here. And I will mentally detach so far away from the situation. And I, to this day, will still do that if I'm not super conscious of that. Because I needed it at that time. That was my only means of survival. But it became part of who I am. And it dawned, there comes a point in time where what you guys are talking about is I have to look at all of the things that I may have once needed in a way that helped me survive the situation that I was in. But now I need to look at reflectively, how do they serve me now? Do these things actually still work for me? And the cool part about this is if I can look at the things that I've been doing forever You know, like in my family, you don't learn to get along. You learn to be the one who yells loudest. You know, I will do one of two things when I get in an argument with somebody. Either I'll shut down or I'll go so far over the fucking top that, you know, it's just extremes of both spectrum. But none of them do anything for me now. And I really need to be conscious to look at, like, do I want to do something different? Because if I do, you know, if you want to stay the same way, that's totally fine. But if I want to reflectively look at all of the shit that I did and it no longer serves me, that actually opens up on a possibility for growth and improvement. You know, and changing to a person that I actually want to be. You know, you talked about games. I'm sure it's not fun to have a room full of people sit there and call you out on your shit. You know? I couldn't imagine doing that in early recovery.
And I just think they have to be people you know give a shit, right? They have to, like, a little bit of it, right? Like, you can't...
I mean, you learn... I mean, it's 2-year treatment, so it's a lot of fucking games. It's like, I think it's like 350 hours of games by the time they're done is what the paper says. But it's like you learn to filter out who has your best interest in mind and who doesn't. And even then, like, sometimes the people that don't have your best interest in mind still have some good shit to say. And so you just learn to, like, kind of take it and, like, do with it what you will. Mm-hmm. Like,
be reflective.
But I don't even talk to anybody from there really anymore.
Yeah. So maybe not really care, but know, or maybe it's like
care enough to hear it in a way that you can do something with it.
Mm-hmm.
Or be self-reflective enough where you can look at it like, listen, I don't like you, but did you just say something that actually might be true?
Well, I mean, I don't think I'd give them that satisfaction, but if it hit me in a way that made me feel something, then it was probably valid. Yeah. Is what I learned. If it
like emotionally,
like if it hit me to where, like, if it hurt, or if it made me question something about myself, or even if I got, like, defensive, that was usually, like, the key one. Is if I got defensive about it, then it was something to look at.
So the indicators if somebody struck a chord. No, I mean, I want to think about this. Not everybody went to a program like you did. But I think we do all have people in life who are mirrors or reflectors to us for the shit that we have going on in our life. You know. Now, let's get super clear. Not everybody has your best interest in mind, and actually there's people that are actually outright trying to harm and hurt people.
Well, yeah, but that doesn't mean that the message that they have, that what they're saying doesn't affect the way you feel. And usually, I'm just like, for me, if it could be somebody I hated the most, but if they said something that made me question what I was doing, then, I mean, just because the messenger is saying it doesn't mean that the message isn't valid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and that's a great way. I mean, I think about this now is like, can we actually, I mean, how do you apply that to your, I mean, I love the things we try to get away from in this podcast is something I can apply to my life today. You know, and to think there's a lot of people in the world, you know, there's a lot, it's really, we live in an environment now where it's really easy to cast stones at people for that. And I don't mean the cheap seat. Brene Brown's got a really good way of talking about this and that man in the arena thing. You know, if you're sitting up in the cheap seats, not doing anything to make your life better, and you're just talking shit about every single person that walks by, because that's your thing, well, fuck you. That's not what I mean. But if it's people who are actually out trying hard and doing the same things and trying to make an effort to make their life better, and they give you some, what could be, you know, constructive or hard criticism, can I be honest enough to look at it and be like, all right, fuck, is there something there? You know, I can't see my own blind spots. And that's the fucking hardest part about it. Is
yeah, I think maybe part of it is like I'm more likely to listen to what someone has to tell me if they're living a life that I want. You know, like if I see someone who's like really joyful and calm and socializes easily and seems to have things going well in their life, and they tell me something, I'm probably more likely to hear it. And that's really not any different than addiction. Like if somebody was like all super fucked up and they were like, no, you should hit the pipe like that, I'm gonna be like, okay, I'm like, I want to get on your level. I'm gonna do what you say. And so I think the same thing is like in recovery. It's like, oh yeah, I want to get on your level. So maybe you might know what you're talking about. Because I don't. I ran out of options.
Well, and that's amazing, because then we can go through the life and start seeking out. I mean, how do we seek out the people that can actually give us meaningful, like how do you improve? I mean, basically you're talking about how do I improve? I mean, it's hard. There's an Einstein thing that he talked about, which is you can't fix a problem with the same mentality that created the problem. I knew
it's like you can't fix the problem to like a problem you're not willing to have.
Yeah, you can't fix a problem you're not willing to have.
If you're not willing to even like have that problem, then you're not going to be open to any kind of solution to that problem.
Yeah, absolutely. And so going through and looking at how do I challenge my known beliefs? Like I knew a shitload about using when I came into recovery. I know a goddamn thing about recovery. Nothing. And I did literally, I spent, I think, the first 6 months to a year just, doing what I always did. Fuck you, I'm cool, I don't need any help, I got this. And that kept me really alone, and it kept me really isolated, and it kept me really by myself. So how do we seek out, basically you're talking is like, how do we seek out mentors?
Yeah, and I think like maybe the other problem that gets in the way is like the lack of trust, right? Like sometimes people know, okay, I know that I need to make these new healthy connections, but the problem is that I don't trust people to have my best interest in mind if they have a lot of trust issues too. So, because I feel like that's what happens a lot when people are starting recovery and they're resistant to making new connections with people. It's like, well, I don't trust you, so why would I do that?
Yeah, but what's that trust based on?
The past.
Yeah, it's literally dragging the residue of my old life into my current life. I lived in a world where I didn't trust anybody because, we lived a super transactional reality, and it was either I was trying to get what you had or you're trying to get what I had, and fuck you, I'm going to try to keep all the shit to myself. And there was no trust, there was no compassion, there was no camaraderie, there was no, empathy, there was no compassion. It was just very give and take. And when I've spent years looking through the world through that lens of just this transactional reality, how do you undo that? I'm not saying I got the answer. How do you start to gain a level of trust when everything I've ever known has told me to run the other way?
When you're able to recognize that running the other way doesn't get you anywhere.
Yeah, you've run out.
When you're able to see that pattern of when I don't trust people or when I don't open up to people, it's the same outcome. So maybe I should try this.
Well, it keeps me the perception of safety.
It keeps you stuck in the problem, which almost goes back to like the victim thing. Like, I liked being stuck in the problem. Like,
how come?
Because then I didn't have to take any responsibility.
Yeah.
I don't have to change it.
It's the world is the problem, not me.
Absolves me of any responsibility to do anything. It's everybody else's fault, not mine.
Yeah. I don't have to do any scary work now.
Yeah. So if we don't have to do... Okay, so I'm going to ask you guys, if you had to look back at your time in recovery to date, what would be, if you had to pick a top 3 list of things that were just absolutely can't do without, what would they be?
I think love, and this is ongoing for me, but like, and that was part of learning trust too, was just like, somebody taking the time to listen to me, or taking the time to give me a 5-second hug, not a 1-second hug, or inviting me in, like inviting me to do things when they don't know me. Like, I needed to see that and feel that to kind of pull me in, because that was the thing that was missing for myself, and the thing that was missing in any relationship. Like, I just needed to feel loved, to know that there was maybe some safety to go forward with new things.
How'd you find that at first? When you're isolated and you know?
Well, that was, so like kind of we were talking about, right? I needed these outside influences to tell me I had issues and I need change. And for me, I needed it to the point of an ankle bracelet and every 4-hour, breathalyzer, and you got a test before noon every day, and that was because I'd run out of options. And so I ran out of options. I had a bunch of people telling me my reality's clashing with my story, and then being in enough pain, my coping mechanisms have stopped working for the most part, and so I do what I'm told because I have nothing else to try, and that means showing up at a meeting, which leads to someone giving me a 5-second hug and being like, oh, that felt good. I like that.
It's a pretty good answer.
Back.
Okay, so the love connection is one of them. What's another one? What is something else you just looking back now, like, I can't do without? A lot of crickets. Megan, what is for you? I want to think about it for a sec.
Honesty. Honesty, listening, and validation.
Honesty, listening, and validation. All right, start with honesty.
I needed someone who, I grew up with every adult in my life, like, babying me and trying to, like, protect me and co-signing my shit. I needed someone to come along who wasn't afraid to, like, call me out on my shit for what it was.
Okay.
Listening.
You listening,
like,
or them listening?
I don't always want. I was gonna say, I don't always want people to solve my problems, but that's not true, because I'm scared to make any decision for myself, because I'm scared it's gonna be the wrong decision. But, which is like a whole thing in itself. But sometimes I just need people to listen. Like, the majority of what, like, my past tells me is that I'm not heard. Mm-hmm. So I just need to be heard. Mm-hmm. Like, that will solve, like, that and validation together solve 90% of Megan.
And that's like the growing out of the victim role, mm-hmm. right? It's like, since if you can validate
what I'm
what
saying.
I think is going on with
Yeah.
me, I feel empowered to change more.
Or even like just I was telling someone yesterday that like just because we validate what somebody is feeling doesn't mean we have to agree with how they're feeling.
Mm-hmm.
So what does validation for you look like? Like you said validation, what does that mean to you?
I hear you. That's like that's literally all it takes is I hear you. I hear what you're saying.
Okay.
I understand.
Yeah, you're an important.
That's valid.
Yeah,
Like
you're important,
right.
and despite any differences I may have with you, everything about you is important. Still.
Right.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's hard.
What?
I get in the mistake a lot of times where I'm like, I hear a problem and I just run in and try to fix it. And I try to get better at getting to the place where like, listen, is this a time when you just want to vent or do you actually want to do something other than that?
Yeah, and I think that
It's hard
I
to
like
notice.
that you said that as a question, right? Or it's like sometimes it's just that simple. Like, oh, I don't know what this person wants. Oh, maybe I'll just ask them. You know, like, are you bringing this up because you would like to vent, or would you like me to help you problem solve?
Yeah. And you just want to, get
The
it out.
majority of the time, what I'm asking, like when I want to vent, is I'm just looking for the validation.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, and so, but I mean, this is looking like going through, like all the things we developed. I mean, we both talked about, why did somebody trust me or why do I feel invalidated? And that's when we first started this conversation, was talking about the unconscious things we do or the way we satisfy, like validation, listening, love, honesty. Those are all super deep-seated core needs that we all have to either give or to be on the receiving end. And if we don't figure out a way to make the unconscious things we're doing conscious, we're going to achieve those in really unhealthy, unnatural ways.
Yeah, and you don't walk in with like I didn't get the ankle bracelet slapped on and walk into the NA meeting and be like, I'm here for love because that's what's missing in my life. But then when I got it, I was like, oh, I haven't felt that in a while. That was nice. So like sometimes I feel like, and same thing with like honesty, right? It's like, oh, I didn't know I needed that in order to be able to, but now that I hear it and now that I feel it, I know that recognizing this might be painful, but it is what I needed to have a life that's better.
How did you find, all right, so pre-recovery, I think were those needs the same? Let me ask the question first. Were those needs of, feeling like, we may not have been honest, but we may have aspired for somebody to believe us. I may have still wanted to be validated. I still wanted to be loved. Were those needs you had, when you were using?
Yeah, sure. I think I probably lied a lot in the hopes that I would still be loved, right? Like if I tell you that I stole money out of your wallet,
Right.
even in my head, I was like, I'm just borrowing it. I'm going to pick up, then I'm going to sell it, and then I'm going to put the money back in the wallet before they ever know, right? But what happened was I stole the money, right? But like, if you call me out on it, I'm going to be like, no, I didn't do that, because if I say I did, then maybe you might not love me.
Yeah. Striving for, there was a huge piece of, all right. That's why I did meth. I used to work for these really ultra-rich families, and, I would work really hard, and then you'd like me more, and then I'd work even harder, and then I'd get more meth, and then I'd work really hard, and then you'd like me, and then I'd work really hard. And it was this weird dynamic where all of my validation always came from external sources. It was never internal. It was never just accepting me for me, So looking at validation, how did you brought up validation, Megan, Was that a need when you were using?
I think being heard definitely was. I don't know. Maybe validation in like a different way.
Same way.
Like I needed people to be like, "Oh, you're pretty."
Yeah.
You know, but not in like very superficial validation, not like you're important. What you're saying is valid.
Yeah.
But like now it's like I'm able to be like, no, regardless of like something that comes up a lot is like sometimes people will tell me like what I feel is not correct. Like, no, I'm like, if I tell you like how something you did makes me feel, sometimes I'll hear,
You're wrong.
you're wrong. And it's like, I've gotten to a point to where I'm able to like internally be like, your feelings are fucking valid. And that's it. Like, you can feel however you want to feel, and that's valid. And I can feel however I feel, and it's still valid. And both can be true at the same time, and neither person is wrong. And it's not like I don't need someone to be like, no, you're wrong.
Yeah.
I need someone to be like, I understand.
Yeah, or like, oh, I didn't realize what I did, whatever, affected you that way. Like, that was not my intention. This is what my intention was. But I do still hear that is what is going on in you. Yeah.
To a different version.
It sounds like all three of us, that's something in common. Is like we sought some sort of external validation in addiction, probably subconsciously, and now recovery is about learning how to validate self more
Without the external.
All right. Well, I like this. This is working pretty good today. So if you had to pick some things that we took away today that you could apply to your life today, what would they be? That we talked about today. Like, what's something that came up today?
I think for me, it's just continuing to validate, like, myself, like, ongoing. Because a lot of the times, like, I'll struggle between the principle of, like, accountability and validation. I'll be like, it's like this constant pull between, am I in the wrong here, or is what I'm feeling valid?
Well,
Like, that's my constant, like,
you can be like, I'm in the wrong and my feelings are valid. You know, like, I am validly angry because I feel my chest pounding. And I need to validate that I'm feeling angry and that's what's going on. And then maybe once that validation has happened, I can take a look at, what's this based on an assumption?
right.
Do I need more information?
Sometimes, like, that separation between that takes time. It's like, there was a situation the other day where I was like, you're triggering something in me, and I don't know what it is, but I know that it's not you. Like, my response to what you're saying is not your fault. but I also need to not interact right now because I need time to like reflect on what that is.
Yeah. Totally.
Yes, that's kind of a master class of trying to be self-aware.
Right.
Of, wow, I feel really fucked up right now. And it started because of something you said, but it's not because of something you said.
Right.
And I think it's hard, right? Because you're like, I need time from you to figure this out in me, but at the same time need to feel supported by you.
Right.
In order to feel safe to look at these things.
But then I also don't want you to be hurt or think that it's you because it's not you, it's me.
But listen, validate me first.
Yeah.
Oh, how confusingly wonderful. I love it. But this is a huge piece of recovery. It's just how do you get reflective on the pieces of yourself that no longer serve you? How do I not use constantly something outside of me to try to fix something inside of me? And there's a lot to that. So I really appreciate what you guys had to say today. Thanks so much for this conversation. I think this was great.
Sweet.
Yay.
Bye.
Sweet. Yay, bye.
All information and other content supplied or communicated in or through this video is for general informational purposes only and does not nor is intended to constitute legal or medical advice. Any viewer of this video should contact his or her own attorney, doctor, or other applicable advisor or practitioner to obtain legal, medical, or other applicable advice with respect to the accuracy, reliability, or potential application to such viewer of any matter discussed or portrayed in this video. Please do not act or refrain from acting in any way based on any information or content supplied or communicated in or through this video. The views expressed during this video are those of the individual presenters only and not those of Choice Recovery Path LLC or any of its customers, suppliers, or affiliates. Any liability with respect to actions taken or not taken by any viewer based on any information or content supplied or communicated in or through such video is hereby expressly disclaimed. All such information or content is expressly provided as is and free of any representation or warranty of any kind.